welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report, and we're live and ready to roll. And then we've got to talk about one of the most amazing technologies. The more I use it, and I think it's a number of years now, Lumen Photon, the more uses I find for it, it's just remarkable. Rod, let's start off with the history of Lumen Photon. Lumen Photon started with Dr. Nogier, who was a French researcher, and he was looking for information dealing with what I call if you want to call it the life force frequency, which is the vibration of biological molecules in solution of water. And water, of course, is an informational superconductor. It turns out that every biological molecule, and we know as chemists, I was a biochemist before I went into medicine, an oceanographer. It turns out that all biological molecules vibrate in the infrared light range, far and near infrared. The far infrared you can't see, so when you look at the Lumen Photon pad, you're going to see little LEDs that look black. They're the most powerful in the industry. I know there's a number. You can go to Hammack or Schlemmer catalog. You can go to Brookstone, find combs to try to regrow your hair. There's nothing like Lumen Photon, and it's so simple to use. And the uses are plethora. So he discovered that each different type of tissue, endoderm, ectoderm, mesoderm, these are the kind of core tissues that make up your guts, your skin, your brain, your bones. Each different tissue has a frequency. And then there's sub-frequencies. So if you look at frequency number 1, it's the most powerful, it's the lowest frequency range. If you look at frequency 7, it's the highest and it's the most anti-inflammatory. And if you look at the NICO, it's a combination of frequencies that stimulates tissue regeneration, stem cell activation, etc. So let's talk about this. The new pads, which I think we've had now for, about a year and a half now?
Yeah.
The new super high-powered pads. They are so powerful, they go through 12 inches of bone, brain, ligament, muscle, guts, liver, and so literally there's nobody large enough that you can't go through at least a foot or more of tissue.
Yeah.
And what it does is it turns off inflammation. So if you have a sore area, slap it on 7, leave it there. 20 minutes, half hour, usually the pain will drop from a 7-8 or 8-9 to like a 1-2 or 3. In terms of tissue regeneration, you want to turn off burns, put it on setting 7. You want to regenerate, say, liver because you've got hepatitis, or regenerate a joint. It's going to stimulate the stem cells to migrate in there, the microcirculation. It'll stimulate detox if you're detoxing your liver. Literally head to toe. Growing hair, put it on your scalp. Sinuses, you want to regrow the periodontal cavitations, put it on your face in the NICO setting after you turn it off if it's pain on 7 for, say, 20 minutes, half hour. And put it over the sinus cavities if you have chronic recurring sinus problems or allergic rhinitis. Let's say you have a problem with glaucoma, retinal problems. Putting in setting number, I think 7 is the best for intraocular pressure. What other settings are good for retinal problems, Ron?
For retinal is primarily number 3. So it's anything. Glaucoma is the only one. Is the only other eye issue that number 7 really lowers that eye pressure. But
for retinal, issues, number 3.
Yeah.
Number 3, and of course NICO, which is a combination of 3 plus other frequencies, right?
Yes.
I often just defer to go to the NICO. That way it's going to bounce around to the frequencies that are going to stimulate the stem cells to regenerate. What it'll do is it's going to dramatically improve microcirculation, detox the tissue, stimulate the stem cells to kind of fly, to rush in there off the freeway of your blood circulation. Then we go down to the neck. If you've got carotid artery problems and you're trying to open up those arteries, if you've got congestion in your chest or coronary artery spasm, if you've got, let's say, an enlarged heart or congestive heart failure, you can regenerate the heart muscle. In fact, even Sherry Rogers listed in her book on cardiac regeneration. And I tell people Lumen Photon is literally a universal tissue healing energy, universal pain reliever, and it's so simple you don't even need to take off your clothing. You can actually put it right over your shirt. You can actually even put a gel pack on the body tissue, like around a knee or a sore tummy, and put a cloth over it, and it'll go right through the cloth and the gel pack, and the light therapy will go right through that to your tissue.
The same applies to a cast. It penetrates. It's the same situation. There's no mass there that's going to block the light. So the light has.
That's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It is even to me today when I think about this, and yet we know that light has no mass, so it passes right through things like this. Now metal blocks it, but fabric doesn't do anything like that.
Yeah, if you have something metal, which is unlikely, I mean.
Yes. And sometimes with a compound fracture, there may be something else in there with a brace in there, but that would block it if it's a metal piece in there.
I mean, you just move it around a bit, and you're going to get around the metal.
Yes.
Yeah, just move, or if you wrap it, it's because it's wrappable.
We've had people with hip replacements and hernia surgeries, things like that, and but the hip replacements, they've got the metal in there often, and we've had people that have used that, and it heals all of that dramatically, and it heals actually over the incision, and the doctors are, wrong patient, wait a minute, hold on back here, this is the wrong patient, it's not the wrong patient. But it always amazes them, well, the lighter couldn't have done this, this is just a miracle. So.
Yeah, you couldn't do it. In other words, they're surprised how quickly it heals.
Yeah.
What I find with Lumen Photon, you can put it over an area, let's say tendonitis, bursitis. If you have a crushed vertebrae, let's say a vertebral collapse, and a stress fracture, shin splints, for example, which are basically hairline cracks. If you do a soft tissue X-ray, you'll see hairline cracks and a compartment syndrome over top of it. What's neat to me is that peripheral neuropathy, you put your feet on the pads, you've got diabetic or toxic peripheral neuropathy, it's going to heal it. If you've got multiple sclerosis, you want to put your feet on the pads, it's going to stimulate nerve fiber tracts all the way to your brain, which helps to remyelinate those nerve fiber tracts. So put it on your feet if you have MS, or in specific areas where you have weakness. Put it over the head. We have people with migraines. The first thing I tell people to do is bite a CoQ10 and keep it under your tongue for 10 to 15 minutes. CoQ10 Supreme. Amazing stuff. By the way, is 8 times more absorbed than any other CoQ10. It's the only one in the marketplace that's not crystallizing. The only one. No other competitor. And when you do that, along with, say, a power methyl B12 under the tongue, and then you slap on the Lumen Photon, and I usually recommend what's called the nucleus trigeminalis. And if you look at the nucleus for the trigeminal ganglion, it's a long, thin nucleus in the entroventral, which means the front, medial, or inside portion of the spinal cord, and there's one on either side, left and right. And that long nucleus goes from C1, which is the first cervical vertebrae, all the way to T1, which is pretty long. It's all the way down the entire cervical spine to the upper T-spine. So you slap the pad back there, and migraines disappear. People say, how do you turn off migraines? I said, you have to change the oxidative stress of the nucleus trigeminalis. And a lot of doctors don't know. They're using drugs even. They don't realize they're affecting the spinal nucleus. So that's what I find amazing. So the B12, power methyl B12 under the tongue, CoQ10, and Lumen Photon.
Yeah.
And of course, preventively, we use cell defense and the Nutridefense, which has the most powerful antioxidant in the world, which is the anhydrous catechin. This is the number one antioxidant on the planet.
Yeah, it works. Everything from canaries, lovebirds, cockatiels. We've used it all. Baby kittens, all the way up to large horses. The Olympic equestrian team used this therapy a couple of years back. It was one of those. One of the reasons they came in second in the competition, because it kept their horses well throughout, so they were able to compete.
Well, I'm a pet lover, and the thing is, if you can work on pets where you can't get a placebo effect, and you know it's real.
Yeah. Yep, and that's true. And it's
on horses. Horses are magical, and if you can fix a horse, and these are penetrating big animals, 2,800 pounds, whatever.
Yes.
So you can just imagine how powerful it is that it can actually take a 2,800 pound animal and then transform them so they're not having tendonitis, bursitis, or for you, they have a strange form of long bone instability where they can get fractures or compression. If you want to regenerate bone, if you want to heal, if you want to stop infection, you got to get the circulation in there. So we give our antipathogenics like Nutriodine, our Tesla-activated diatomic iodine. No one else has it. We're the only ones. And then you use our Allison Med, which is safe for all animals and humans, and Silver 100, the most powerful ionic silver citrate complex in the world. No other competitor. There is no other ionic silver, by the way. They're all liars. The only one is the ionic citrate complex. Add Lumen Photon, and whether it's periodontal disease, or if it's your pet, or if it's yourself with chronic cystic fibrosis, chronic diverticulosis, vascular disease, coronary spasm, Lumen Photon, get one for every family.
You may have heard about taking GCN.
with Tim Alexander, Earl Sterling, in with Dr. Bill Deagle. Dr. Deagle stepped out for just a second. He'll be right back. We have some interesting breaking news. As soon as Dr. Bill is back, I want to go over my analysis of what's happening in Iraq. Within the last day or two, the world's woken up to a sudden surprise attack by what's called Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State of Iraq, and Al-Sham, IS for short, which is an Al-Qaeda offshoot, and they took over the second largest city in Iraq and quite a number of other towns and cities, surrounded the biggest one of the biggest gas and petroleum centers in Iraq. And currently they're driving towards Baghdad. And in multiple places we saw large numbers of Iraqi troops simply desert, lay down their weapons, and flee. They weren't even able to obtain a quorum in the Iraqi parliament because too many of the members had fled.
And Dr. Bill is back, so Tim, continue.
I was just saying I've got an analysis here of what's happening in Iraq.
Yeah, I want people to hear this. This is remarkable. This is one of the reasons why you're a star on this program and this network, why I have you on regularly. There's very few people that can touch you in terms of geopolitical, military, strategic analysis, so please continue.
Okay. The Al-Qaeda, thank you, by the way. The Al-Qaeda forces are supported by Saudi Arabia and indirectly by America and are fighting against the Syrian government as well as the Iraqi government. Hence, there's a strong tie to Israel and the global banking cartel. The Zionist cartel forces have not been able to defeat Syria in spite of the billions of dollars poured into the battle by the West, Saudi Arabia, and some of the Gulf Cooperative Council nations. Assad's forces have mostly defeated the large number of foreign mercenaries, and recently Assad freed a large number of POWs, which was a major sign of strength. Syria was attacked by Western globalists and Zionist forces for several reasons. Syria is the back door to a war with Iran. Syria, Hezbollah, and Iran have a joint missile force that can destroy Israel and are resisting the Israeli drive to dominate the entire Middle East. Iran and Syria are opposed to the Rothschild-led drive towards a new world order and a new world currency to replace the U.S. dollar following its planned collapse soon. Let me continue. Russia prevented the planned Israeli-American attack on Iran about a year and a half ago. Russia also prevented by sending a large battle fleet to areas offshore of Syria in the eastern Mediterranean, a U.S., UK, French, Israeli invasion of Syria almost a year ago. This was over the Syrian chemical weapons. This was the reason America, controlled by Zionists and global bankers, set up a coup in the Ukraine, installing the strange coup junta, which is a mix of genuine European fascists and Jewish oligarchs and Jewish central bankers. The fighting there now is designed to punish Putin as well as being a bear trap for Russian forces to tie them down so that an allied force can sweep into Syria. And by the way, there's a large allied force in Jordan right now on the Syrian border, can sweep into Syria, beginning a general Middle East war. The Russian bear, under Putin's wise strategic leadership, did not step into the bear trap. They did manage to seize their base, their key naval base in the Black Sea, but they haven't, as of yet, invaded the Ukraine proper. Hence, we now have a new strategic initiative by the Zionist globalists, the quote-unquote Al-Qaeda attack on Iraq, which is creating a two-nation battle zone, Iraq and Syria, and may very well drag Iran into the fray. And And this is what's happening in Iran or in Iraq and Syria is vital to Iranian national security interests. If Iran is dragged into the fray, Bibi, who I call 666 Netanyahu, will finally get his general Middle East war, and the globalist bankers, or banksters actually, will get their third world war. Netanyahu wants to destroy all of his Middle East enemies in one massive war, utilizing not only Israeli nukes, but NATO firepower. The global banking cartel families are well into their endgame for establishing their long-sought New World Order. Their strategy calls for a total global economic collapse and the introduction of a new world digital currency with RFID chips, what many of us see as the mark of the beast. Further, they intend to control the masses during this phase-in of the New World Order by a new global war, World War III. They further intend to reduce the total global population by over 6 billion people. That's out of a total population of about 7 billion people. They plan on eradicating over 6 billion of us to reduce the herd of, quote, end quote, unnecessary eaters and to make their demonic New World Order high-tech slave state more manageable. That's my analysis.
That's pretty shocking. Now, let me ask a couple questions. Firstly, the timeline appears that they want to start the war this year. We also have the Pope calling for ecumenism. We've spent 2 hours yesterday, and I managed to pop in for part of it with Dr. Bob Thiel, who's part of a new version of the Church of God. You know, remember that program is on television, and I believe his analysis is correct, that we're in the stage of ecumenism now where the Pope and the Vatican are moving with the other churches to come together to a full New World Order religion, an amalgam. And they're trying to dialogue with Muslims, with Eastern Orthodox, with the Church of England, with other organizations. He's trying
real hard with the Eastern Orthodox, but they are almost certain not to go along with it because, for one thing, they have a diffused leadership. All bishops are equal. And while they have patriarchs that are senior bishops, they all are equal, and they all basically have to go along, and they're simply not going to do that.
Yes,
and
not
all
to
the Protestant religions will go along, but many will.
Yeah.
There is a big push, and I do not trust Pope Francis. For one thing, if he was genuine about reforming the church on either day 1 or day 2 of his papacy, he would have ended the man-made rule of mandatory celibacy for priests, and he would start flushing out the homosexuals and the pedophiles in the priesthood. Right now, you've got about 60% of Catholic priests are homosexuals, and that's despicable, unacceptable morally, theologically, et cetera, He knows that, but he hasn't really taken the steps. He's been Pope for over a year now. So I don't trust him. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, that's good. It's good hearing, because you were a laity of, you want to almost priesthood, basically. You wanted the lay.
Well, I was in the diaconate program to be ordained after my wife died, and I just saw too many priests I knew went to prison for sex crimes, and I just
reality is reality. Ugly, but we know once we see sin, we can fix it. We just need to pray and repent, and God says, I'll take it from the east to the west, far as the west, and to the bottom of the sea, and make your sin as white as wool. But repentance happens first. Back in just a moment with Tim Alexander. We're going to analyze this to the hilt.
Global warming purports rising CO2 levels, while evolution describes mutated DNA. The fraudulent sciences describe effects of iron poisoning and copper depletion. As generations are iron poisoned and
we are the premier independent talk radio network, the Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place. Right. Even your emotions have an echo in so much space.
Welcome back, and Tim, this analysis is pretty stark. Basically, it says this is like the groundwork for World War I, only this is World War III, and the bankers are in a panic. They always seem to be off the mark. For example, when they set up that staging for that school shooting where the school was closed for 4 years, I'd like you to kind of say what you said on the break. But
they don't think like we do. First off, they think they're better than us. They're exalted. They're the human beings on this earth, and we're not. We're four-legged or two-legged animals. They are so full of themselves that they don't get their head is definitely screwed on backwards because they're Luciferian worshipers. Now, when they did the false flag at the school about a week and a half before Christmas 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, they expected that this was going to be so traumatic that the American public would support a wholesale confiscation of guns. Just the opposite happened. People went out and bought guns as fast as they could and ammunition as fast as they could. I remember being in gun stores. Even shotgun shells could not be had. Even not just double odd shot, but bird shot. It wasn't there. It was gone. Everybody bought up everything they could. They spent 2 years and a whole lot of money setting that false flag event up, and only with the total control of the media could they have gotten by with it, and yet it failed. They fell on their face, and it actually was counterproductive. Now, when you look at Syria, they have spent billions of dollars sending in mercenaries from all over the Muslim world to fight the Syrians. The Syrian army and the Syrian people have stood behind their government. Actually, the younger side they pretty much do like, but it's not even about him. It's about their country. These are invaders coming in to impose laws on them. They know the game. They know what's happening. And they're fighting for their country on their land, and they're tough SOBs to begin with anyway. And yet the globalists and the Zionists have thought that they could just keep sending these mercenaries in. Basically, Assad has handed them their heads on a platter. He recently, just within the last few days, had a big amnesty for many of the POWs, and that is a sign, particularly in the Arab culture, that's a sign. I'm in charge. You're no longer a threat to me. I can be merciful to you if I want because you're not a danger. Now, what has happened in Iraq? The Iraqi parliament tried to pass the emergency legislation. Most of the members didn't show up. They're scared. The reason they're scared. Let me give you some quick numbers here.
You're talking about the recent legislation. Of course, was it the town? Was it Mosul?
They literally yesterday, the parliament was called into emergency session to pass the emergency powers for the government. Only 128 out of 325 parliament members in Baghdad showed up for the session. Now, the reason is the Iraqi streets in areas like in Mosul, the second largest city in Iraq, the streets have been lined with decapitated heads of police and soldiers in the jihad takeover. They literally, and this is a ISIS trademark, they cut off the heads of the policemen and soldiers that they kill or capture, and they line them up and down the streets like you would lanterns or something for Christmas or what other, as a warning. And it's a trophy-style execution favored by the ISIS militants. And this is scaring the living hell out of everybody in that area. They have asked the United States Air Force, the Iraqi government has requested that the United States Air Force provide close air support and bomb the insurgents. The U.S. Air Force is not going to do that, according to Obama administration. Now, the Obama administration is coming out with a lot of hot air about how much they support them, and we're going to send them some equipment. What we found is the troops are running away and leaving their tanks, leaving their helicopters, leaving their missiles at their bases. So anything we send is going to end up in the hands of these extremists. But this is all part of the game because these extremists are Sunni, not Shiites, and vehemently opposed to the Shiites. This is the bear trap for Iran. Iran feels that its strategic interests are gravely at danger. If
but the majority of the people, Tim, the majority of the Muslims in Iraq are Shiite. Out of 26 million before Gulf War 1 and 2 started, probably 23 million were Shiite Muslim.
Exactly.
And that means, literally most of Iraq could literally be just annexed by Iran.
Exactly.
So I don't think people understand that. And the northern part is almost exclusively, Sunni Kurdish. But the Kurdish people, believe it or not, are tied directly to the Cohens. Most people don't realize when the Medo-Persian Empire took the Cohens to the north to Esfahan, and I know this from my ancestry, the Kurds and the Cohens intermarried. In fact, the family name of my mother's family is Naima, is the name of the Kurdish tribe of the king of the Kurds, 2,800 years ago, the Niami tribe. So my mother's maiden name, Naima, refers to the Kurdish tribe that, with the Medo-Persian Empire, conquered Israel. Okay,
well,
so
the Kurds took back Kirkuk.
They took back all the oil is northern, and they got tourism there. They got hotels. They have a massive personal army now in northern Kurdistan. And if the Kurds took most of western Iran, which is Esfahan, which is the northern capital, and most of eastern Turkey, it would probably be the largest country in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And we're talking about Kurdistan, which doesn't exist yet, but northern Iraq is basically the United of Kurdistan.
By seizing Kirkuk, which they've wanted for some time, that is key. That is a key oil-producing, refining, and oil transmission center. So they've been getting a percentage of the oil revenues for their anonymous province, but now they're going to be in a totally different boat.
Let's put it this way: other than the
issue, what's happening with the Kurds is really minor. This whole thing is a dagger directed at Iran. So what they've done, because they haven't been able to use Syria totally as the backdoor to Iran, they've sprung that war. They've opened that war from Syria up really big time to Iraq, and now Baghdad itself is under threat. And that is a direct threat to Iran. If Iran intervenes, this is what they want them to do. They wanted Putin to go into the Ukraine, and he avoided that. But they want Iran to go in. Well, this is right next door. This is, Iran. The president has already said they're not going to tolerate it. So who knows? But,
Iran doesn't have to be. I'll tell you what I think will happen. I think you're going to see the resurgence of what never really went away. I know people think that the Soviet Union disappeared. As my friend says from Belarus, he says, worked at Storage Tech, he said, all we do is change hats. So what's happening is you're going to see the Polish, the areas, for example, that were part of Soviet Russia. They're primarily Russian, of the Ukraine, for example, cities like Slavyansk and in these other towns and so on. Donetsk. Donetsk is Russian, okay? It's 80% Russian population. It's ridiculous. So,
there have been a couple of interesting developments in the Baltic and also in the Ukraine. The Kyiv junta says that 3 Russian tanks plus other armored vehicles have entered eastern Ukraine. Now, the Russians are denying this, but I've been expecting this. I suspect that the insignias of the Donetsk and Luhansk regional republic that they've declared not a Russian insignia, but Russia has to send some high-tech equipment in.
They'll supply equipment. This is going to turn out different than the Europeans and Americans want. It's going to be bad.
What if Americans could have A, better health, B, a lower incidence of cancer, and C, a lower occurrence of fibrocystic disease of the breast, all from simply consuming more iodine? Nutridyne Iodine from Dr. Bill Deagle's Nutrimedical.
We are America's largest independently owned communications network, GCN.
Tim, the reason why I deviated off on the issue of the carving up, there's a reconstituting of the Middle East. Iran is a major power now. They have drones, they have Shahed-3 missiles, they have the most biologically advanced weapon systems, which they, by the way, shared with the Russians and the Syrians. This is not going to be a kind of America goes in and just kind of clobbers them game. It's going to, America goes in and sees most of our military bases targeted with missiles, and many hundreds of thousands of our soldiers and their Navy die. We're going to see a major destruction to our ability to project power around the world. We're going to be embarrassed on the financial side when Russia and the BRICS nations pull the rug out from under the American so-called Federal Reserve dollar, which is already, by the way, happening. This is a process that's going on now, which is panicking the West to try to start a war, trying to divert it. They can't win this war. They can't. It's just the way it is. And the only thing that would be reasonable is to start dialoguing with the Chinese and Russians to say, hey, let's make a deal, like the TV show.
Well, instead of rational, intelligent, reasonable people would do that.
Right,
but,
and then the same thing with Israel. We need an
and Zionists are not rational. They're not reasonable.
Well, I got a solution for that, too. We need to annex Israel. The state of Israel should not be a separate state. They're already on the teat of America all continuously, and they are not under the control of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'm sure that the Joint Chiefs at night bite their bed sheets, thinking, what the hell are the Israelis going to do next? And now Obama has given them bombers, tanker bombers, and long-range equipment, so they can drop the GB-54 bombers, bunker busters on the Qum, and other places like Natanz. This is really bad.
The people that don't think properly strategically always think what they can do to the other guy. They don't factor in enough what the other guy can do to them. And I see that a great deal with Israel. Some of their people are very smart, but and some of their Mossad leaders or former leaders have been very vehement in warning about this. But others, particularly in the Netanyahu government, they're so full of themselves and their power and what they can do and what they can get America and Britain and France to do for them. They forget the very, very dangers that their little tiny country is facing from Iran and its advanced biological warfare, from the Hezbollah and Iranian and Syrian missiles. And
just from Hezbollah and Syrian missiles.
They can kill everybody in the Middle East, but they'll still be dead. Who won that battle?
Right.
That's why you call it MAD, mutually assured destruction.
Right.
Let's head a little bit north from the Middle East right now.
Right.
Russia has sent 24 warships, including some very large, very advanced warships, and bombers to its Baltic drills, which are happening right next door as NATO stages war games in the Baltic. Now, keep in mind, Kaliningrad, which is part of Russia, was originally East Prussia, and it's right below Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. And I can give you the history why the connection. But anyway, it was seized by Russia, and at the end of the World War II, and it became part of Russia proper. It's disconnected from the Russian mainland, but it's on the Baltic Sea, and it's a big military base. They've sent in some of their newest Su-34 fullback fighter bombers. This is a variant of the Su-27 family, as well as the Su-24MR recon aircraft, the Tu-22 M3 long-range supersonic bombers. They're loaded for bear, so to speak, and so are our NATO people. Totally unnecessary. You have two massive war games going on literally across the border from one another, while war is going on in the Ukraine, and now this whole thing in the Middle East is developing.
It's a formula for disaster. It's a formula for somebody to kind of blink and some stupid thing happening. I use the analogy of someone
I think the globalists want that.
Well, of course they do.
That's the scary
problem
thing.
Is, you see,
when you've got one side that wants World War III is like, what? Are you nuts? And the answer is, well, yeah, you're demonist. You're Luciferian. Your thinking process has been the demonic infestation has metastasized into your brain. Your thinking process is totally screwed up.
I love that term you're using. The situation now. You mentioned also in your news blog that, of course, what happened is that the Kurds took Kirkuk, which is why I've deviated off and talked about Kurdistan, because that's the largest chunk of oil in the Middle East is right there in northern Iraq. There's an area there burning for 5,000 years. They call it the Eternal Fire. I don't know what the Arabic name for it is. But it's been literally burning. This area zone has been burning for 5,000 years.
Yeah, they can't put it off. It's gases, yeah.
Right, it's all gassing. Now, here's what's happening. What's likely to happen is a shift in power. The second largest gas producer in the world is Iran. And the Iranians in the western area of their empire, which is, by the way, where the Bashir reactor is also, the Iranians, all they wanted under Mossadegh back in the, I think it was 60s, was simply to have a better percentage and set up a petrochemical industry so they could produce glass and other materials and chemicals, etc. That's all the Iranians wanted, is a better deal from the British oil companies. But they wouldn't do it, and that's why they brought in the Shah of Iran, etc. What's going to happen now is that the Iranians, after going through the horror of the Iraqi-Iran war, which, they had over 500,000 young people literally march without weapons across minefields so the tanks could then proceed over their dead bodies and kill the Iraqis who were trying to invade and take over the country.
And they were told, if you survive, grab a weapon from, because some of them had weapons, but a minority, grab a weapon from one of your brothers that has fallen in combat and continue on. And they actually did that, in mass, as you said, 500,000.
In mass. So this is the mentality of the people. Do you think that our special forces and our robot drones and our tanks can defeat a people like that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They will fight to the last drop of blood, the last oxygen molecule.
And the mainstream media will never tell you this, but they have a MAD with the United States, with
more
Canada,
than one MAD,
with all the European countries, with Israel, with all the Middle East, and that is advanced biological warfare.
By the way, they're in place now. They don't have to fly it in or drone it in. Those are sitting in the back of fridges in every Western city.
His little supply in his freezer, and there are probably hundreds of people in Europe and North America, deep cover, and they're prepared when they receive a command. And at that point, Iran may be virtually dying. There may not be enough people left to bury the dead in Iran from Israeli and NATO nuclear bombardment, but they will be able to return the favor by releasing multiple genetically engineered super killer viruses into our civilian communities. And the word insane and insanity doesn't begin to do justice to how bizarre and how evil.
And it all comes down to banking, too. It all comes down to the fact that the banks have decided in the last year or so they can't make enough money even from the derivatives market, so they decide they're going to pull a plug on everything because they're just drooling for this mark of the beast, for an authentication currency where it's illegal to even have cash in your pocket, gold or silver coin.
The exposure to derivatives is about $1.5 quadrillion.
Right.
Now, that's kind of a nice hunk of change, a quadrillion. That's $1.5 quadrillion is 1,500 trillion.
Right. Well, what I see happening is I think this is going to devolve into a period of false peace, which I think is going to happen real soon. That false peace is tied to the ecumenism, which is going on with this Pope. There's going to be a deal, because ultimately what the Russians and Chinese want is not war, but a financial deal where they have equal place on the table financially with an amalgam of currencies, almost like the Bretton Woods system, so that the Fed Reserve mutates into a world reserve bank, and the Russians and Chinese feel that they're not being screwed continuously. There'll be peace for a period of time, and then it's going to break. And that's what it's talked about in the Bible. It'll be a first half of the 7 years will be a false peace. When they shall say peace and security, it says this in the book of Acts, as well in the Old Testament, then destruction shall come upon them suddenly, and it'll occur, believe it or not, on Passover again. The middle day of the 7 years is Passover.
Well, get right with God, folks. Pray.
Tim, you'll be back in hour 3. We'll continue this dialogue of your blog. If you have new information, boy, this is amazing, powerful stuff. We'll be back in a moment. We're going to do health and wellness. You want to take care of your body. You want